Welcome. My name's Chris Davis. I'm a ketogenic carnivore nutrition coach, and today I just wanted to break down another article that I found. So, this one is from Northwestern Medicine. It's titled Pros and Cons of the Keto Diet: How This Low Carb Diet Impacts Your Health. So, I'm kind of glad they did at least say and specify what they're looking at for the keto diet, because there's quite a range depending, and should be a range, depending on what your goals are, how bad off you were when you started the diet, how many medications you were on when you started. That'll impact how you should go about it and what your percentages should be. So they have the daily breakdown of 5% from carbs, 20% from protein, and 75% from fat, which I think the fat content is a little bit high. So, again, like I said, it really depends, right? What are you going for? Like when I started down this journey, this rabbit hole 13 years ago, I was 50 pounds heavier. I was upset a lot. I was angry a lot. I didn't sleep well. I actually had CPAP with oxygen, right? I'm doing good. I found my formula. And so, based on what you have going on, right? This is from Carb Manager, and I agree mostly with their percentages, right? 55 to 75 from fat, 15 to 35 from protein, and less than 10 from carbs. Now, depending on the individual and how active they are, I do actually promote up to 20% for carbohydrates, but it's not the norm. I generally do try to keep people at 10% carbs, but it's again that system of seek and destroy, and this worked and that didn't, and modify here and there. So, continuing on with the article. So, they have a dietitian, right, that talks about the energy's primary source is glucose, which is obviously the breakdown of carbohydrates. And I always love, because they always say that, since keto limits carbs, it forces your body to burn fat for fuel instead. Well, yeah, and if you don't eat for 2 days, then guess what? Your body's gonna burn what you have on it for fuel. So that's just how shit goes. So they do talk about, how it works. So one of the good things about our bodies, let's face it, God made us a miracle. It's a wonder that we can eat some of the shit that we eat and not die like just on the spot, right? He definitely made us a miracle. So one of the things that he did was he gave us a process, gluconeogenesis, that allows our body to create glycogen, right? It's awesome, right? It's estimated, they think that about 60 grams per day that can be generated just from what you have. Now, it is mostly made in the liver, but it can also be in small quantities in the kidneys and the small intestines. But I mean, how cool is that? That our body is smart enough to say, you know what? For example, I work out fasted in the morning, right? And my body's like, oh, let's generate some glucose. So my waking glucose is usually about 87. After I work out, it's 98. So my body has created what I need. So I don't need to ingest carbohydrates. My body will generate what I need. So from there, the article goes into the benefits, which I did appreciate them putting the benefits, because they tried to be all dark and gloomy at first. And so they did start with the benefits. So kudos to them. And it says you can lose weight rapidly. Now, again, words matter. So when I read this and they talked about that there were anecdotal, really, what do you think observational studies are? What do you think epidemiological studies are? They are anecdotal. They are people saying, this is what I did and this is what happened. Okay, so but they downgrade it, right? They call it anecdotal. They don't want to call it epidemiological because that sounds more sciencey, right? It's a sciencey term. But the epidemiological studies aren't worth the paper they're written on most times either, because, what'd you eat in the last year? Seriously, can we just stop? But they purposely do this. So you're going, oh, it's just someone's story. That's what everything is someone's story. I digress. And it talks about, while many people report initial rapid weight loss on the keto diet due to the glycogen depletion and water loss, long-term fat loss depends on sustained calorie deficits and metabolic adaptations. Okay, no. not the calorie deficits. Obviously, they haven't paid attention because, one, if someone is in a calorie deficit, it's because they're making poor choices, right? You eat until you're comfortably stuffed, and then you just stop eating, which causes me to eat potentially 2,800 to 3,200 calories per day. And then metabolic adaptations, absolutely. Your body is a carb junkie, right? I was recovering carb addict, right? I'm Italian. I love carbs, right? I love carbs. So yeah, there was an adaptation period where my body was like, oh my hell, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? We have to have these carbohydrates. And then it realized, oh wait, no. Oh, we don't? Oh, well, shit. And so now 13 years later, the weight came off 50 pounds and it hasn't come back on. The counter to that, I did actually find a paper on a randomized controlled trial. Now, not that randomized controlled trials are perfect. However, they are better than an epidemiological study. So this one I found, it was in PubMed in 2004. Yes, it's a little dated, but information still good. A low-carb ketogenic diet versus a low-fat diet to treat obesity and hyperlipidemia. So what was the conclusion? Well, compared with the low-fat diet, the low-carb diet program had better participant retention and greater weight loss. Well, why? Because honestly, you don't feel hungry. You don't have cravings. You don't get the munchies. You don't want to nosh. And honestly, after like a month, you go through the bakery section of the store. Oh my God, it smells like rancid oil. Like you don't even want that. That's why they were probably able to maintain it more and lose more weight as a result, which good for them. Benefit 2, you can eat high-fat foods you may enjoy. Absolutely. Ribeye steak every night for dinner. And so they do talk about, on paper, burning fats by eating more of them is enticing. I don't know if I'd use that word, but anyways, which is why the keto diet has become popular. No, that's not why it's become popular. It's become popular because people are having amazing results. They're dropping, 100 pounds, 50 pounds. They're getting off their medications. They're no longer type 2 diabetics. Their high blood pressure goes away. That's why they're doing it. But it talks about that they allow people to eat types of fats, that they enjoy, red meats, fatty fish. I don't eat nuts. I do eat cheese. I don't eat butter while still losing weight. Now, I always find it fascinating, right? Because they say that experts recommend. Who's the experts? Because I got news for you. A lot of these people that proclaim to be experts have not looked at a chart of the intestinal system. But they recommend olive oil, which I don't do, avocado, which I don't do, and fatty fish, which I think I eat salmon like once a month, maybe. So what do I eat in a day? It's pretty simple. I'm like that dog that, oh my God, kibble, kibble. They get so excited. I'm the same way, right? On the left, that's breakfast. Typically, it's anywhere between 8 and noon. Dinner's typically 4 to 6. And that's it, right? It's 4 eggs with bacon bits and Mexican cheese, couple slices of beef bacon. For dinner, it's always ribeye steak. They tend to be anywhere from 14 to 20 ounces because we get the ribeye roll and then cut them up and weigh them, so they vary a little bit. And then that's just some romaine lettuce with Parmesan cheese, and then I sprinkle it with ranch or balsamic vinaigrette. And that's just because with the high fat content of the ribeye steak and honestly the amount of protein that it is at one time, and I not having gallbladder, I just haven't figured it out how to not. So whatever, it works for me. So benefit 3, there is evidence that it can help specific groups of people. I always love that they say that, right? And they always talk about kids and seizures and epilepsy and right. And so before they came out with meds to stop seizures, there was actually studies that they were doing. And if the kids kept at about 90% fat, their seizures stopped. And so, but then they came out with meds for it. So don't worry about all those carbs. Just eat whatever you want and pop this pill. That's so much better for you. And so again, they always talk about, the epileptics. And so this is cureepilepsy.org. And so what they're recommending is 80 to 90% from fat, 6 to 8% from protein, and 2 to 4% from carbs. That's for epilepsy. Now, Again, like I said, the ketogenic diet is good for everybody. So then they go into the risks. Well, first one, difficult to maintain. Okay, it's like all I could do to not laugh when I read that, right? Because of the stringent food restrictions, many find the keto diet hard to stick to. Honestly, that passed after like 2 weeks. And you make appropriate modifications, right? You don't go to the grocery store hungry, like duh. You eat and then you go to the grocery store. It says that it can be effective for weight loss when used in a short-term period, followed by the adaptation of healthier eating habits. Sorry, honey, ketogenic eating is a healthy eating habit. So again, the wording matters. They're trying to say that doing a ketogenic diet isn't the healthiest option. So we'll get to that later. And then they talk about how ketosis is difficult to achieve because it's like a light switch. Individuals who consistently track food intake are more likely to remain in ketosis. Food tracked. I don't, right? I food track so I can make these videos. That's why I food track. So I can show you as a 51-year-old female who's been ketogenic for 13 years what I eat. I am right now 30% protein, 4% carbs, and 66% fat, based on what I put into my health food calculator thing. And like I said, that's basically what I eat every day, right? Sometimes I'll throw in some homemade jerky that I make. I just put red mint sea salt in it, throw it in the dehydrator, it makes itself. That's about it. It takes potentially 2 to 4 days for your body to enter ketosis following a low-carb diet. So it's not like, oh my God, it's unattainable. But you might have to go up to 6 weeks, right? Because again, how far are you? Right? Are you 50 pounds overweight like I was? Are you 100 pounds overweight? Are you on insulin? Are you on high blood pressure medication? Are you sedentary, right? All these things come into play. But it's not a risk because, again, if you don't eat for 2 days, your body will start making ketones to try to help you. Risk number 2, you have a greater risk of nutrient deficiency and calorie depletion. Bullshit. Nope, not. They're talking about, right, lack of vitamins, minerals, and fibers that you get from fresh fruits, legumes, vegetables, and whole grains. Spoiler alert, none of those are required for life. Carbohydrates are not required for life, right? Fiber is not required for life. Now, they do mention the keto flu. And what is that? Well, that's your body detoxing. Right? So for example, for me, I was 38 years old when I started this journey. So I had 38 years of poisoning myself. Yeah, my body's going to do some adjusting, which is why I have people that are a little bit higher carb, right? 50, maybe even 70 grams a day versus being 20 grams a day or even just Lion's diet, right? It's not you have to be Lion's diet in order to start off correctly. But depending, yeah, you might not feel well because your body is trying to get all the crap out of your system, right? Again, I mostly eat cow and I mostly eat chicken eggs. I do enjoy duck eggs during the summer, though, I won't lie. But here's all the nutrients, the vitamins and minerals that are in, just in particular, ribeye steak, which is what I have for every day for dinner, and eggs, which I have 4 of them, at least, every day for breakfast. I'm not sure where the deficiency in vitamins and minerals. Now, I will say there are people like myself that I do take an electrolyte supplement, right? Sodium, magnesium, potassium. Why I have to? I have no idea, because based on what the daily requirement is and what I'm eating, I shouldn't need to. But again, I am very physically active. I try to stay active to promote being upright and mobile. And so there are people, yeah, that they never take any salts. They just drink water and they're totally golden. Well, bless their hearts, I'm not one of them right now. Humans do not need fiber to survive or thrive, right? It's one of the big lies we've been told, and honestly, I think it was from the vegetarian vegans, that they got into the medical school system, they got into the health system, and they promoted this shit in an attempt to get people to eat more veggies. And we don't need veggies. We need none veggies. So the risk number 3, bad fats can be bad for heart health. have much to say about the American Heart Association except for the fact that I don't trust them. And they talk about the high fat nature of the diet could have negative impacts on heart health, and they recommend limiting saturated fat to less than 6%. Many people eat high amounts of saturated fat, which could cause increased risk of heart disease. And then, of course, they always want to worry about your LDL cholesterol, right? And it's like, okay, that was disproven. Right, back in 1948 with the Framingham study that saturated fat dietary cholesterol does not raise cholesterol, and LDL is not the meanie that everybody thinks it is, and it's more your triglyceride HDL ratio that's the problem. And so a higher cholesterol tends to increase the rate of heart attacks and strokes. That's incorrect, right? That is actually not correct. So I've shown this chart before on the hazard ratios for the development of coronary heart disease. And when you look at this, it is astonishing. In the blue, the fifth one down, that's the risk factor for LDL. Look how many things are above that. Okay, higher risk factor, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, hypertension, obesity, smoking, hell, even a family history of premature cardio heart disease, which honestly, a lot of times that comes to just, it's a family learned eating habit, not actually that the family's just more susceptible in my eyes anyways. Right, triglycerides, ApoB, non-HDL, right? There's so many risk factors above cholesterol. Consider that. Now, might LDL play a role in your story? Absolutely. The centenarian study that they did with people over 100, they had a high total cholesterol and a low glucose. So it says, and I found this on Healthline, research indicates that consuming a lot of saturated fat may adversely affect health. However, it's important to keep in mind that not all saturated fats are created equal. That cannot be more true, right? Because my ribeye steak is a lot different than going to McDonald's or Burger King or eating fried whatever or going to the bakery and getting sugary whatever, right? Now, the processed meats thing, honestly, I think that sometimes gets a bad rap because I'm Italian, right? We eat a lot of processed meats. They have, right, the antipasta before the meat and cheese plate, right? I grew up eating that before the pasta plates came out. Not entirely convinced on that one, but right, and then they talk about saturated fats from dairy. Grass-fed meat, honestly, even grain-fed meat is better than any vegetable or grain product you're going to ingest. So, and then coconut, which I don't know that I've ever done coconut. So the fourth risk, right, they say it can be tough on your kidneys. I'm going to go with no on that one. So some people have experienced dehydration, right? Well, honey, you've got to make sure that you stay hydrated, right? My husband, he got brain clots when he was 38, and he says hydrate or die. And that is so true, right? You really do need to do that. However, there's no scientific evidence to support this misconception, right? While some may claim that ketosis is harmful to the kidneys, there is no scientific evidence to support this misconception. On the contrary, research has shown that ketosis can have a positive effect on kidney health. And it's like, seriously, because what could be the issue? Oxalate poisoning, hello. It's estimated that 80% of kidney stones are from oxalate poisoning. Well, where do you find oxalates? In plant foods. Sorry, truth hurts. Right? And so having that oxalate accumulation, that's more of a problem, right? So anybody, regardless if you're ketogenic or whatever, you have got to stay hydrated. But there's nothing that shows that being ketogenic is bad for the kidney. The fifth risk I just found fascinating. When you track your food, it can lead to disordered eating. The only time that I recommend people track their food is when they're starting out. And it's not for calories, it's not for how much of what, it's to make them more mindful, right? It's to make them more understand what they're putting in their mouth. Like when they go for something, what does it look like, right? Again, I don't track my food intake except to make these videos. If you just eat cow, chicken, fish, and pig, boom, done. You don't have to track your food. You just eat animal products. I mean, it's that simple. They also talk about a risk that it could cause blood pressure and blood sugar to drop. So a lot of it is during that adjustment period, right? Where you're not drinking or eating or doing something the way that you should. Maybe you still are dependent on that Coca-Cola first thing in the morning and I know I should drop that, but I haven't, right? So maybe you get dizzy, you get lightheaded, and then the blood sugar dropping. Yeah, exactly. That's what happens when you drop carbohydrates is your blood sugar drops. Now, if you are diabetic, please work with your doctor, because if you start a low carbohydrate ketogenic diet, you may find you don't need as much or any insulin. So please, please, please work with your doctor. Okay. And it may be after a week. It might be after a month that all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, I don't need this damn insulin. And then you can change it or reduce it or get rid of it appropriately. So in my case, I'm not diabetic. So my blood pressure when I was creating this video was 112/70 and my pulse was 69, right? My resting heart rate is between 46 and 54 beats a minute. So my glucose when I wake up is generally 80 to 87. And then after exercise, it's about 98. So I don't see the issue with having blood pressure that is really good. Now, with that being said, I'm not just ketogenic. I do fasting and I also exercise. Right? Probably incessantly if you ask my husband. But anyways, so other approaches to weight loss, right? They talk about for long-term weight loss, they recommend the Mediterranean diet, which focus on, boom, there it is, plant-based eating. Really? You thought that all this was going to be said by a meat eater? Nope. It's by either vegetarian or vegan, right? You don't know since they rebranded and they went plant-based. Nope. So one of the problems with plant-based nutrition is you are deficient, right? You can be deficient in B12, omega-3, calcium, zinc, iron, magnesium, and high-quality protein, right? It is hard to get the same amount of quality protein out of a plant product than you can from an animal product. And honestly, 150 years ago, before supplementation, vegans didn't live long. Okay, they just didn't. They were smaller, they were weaker because they did not have the animal protein that they needed. So, where they talk about that you could be, no, you are. Okay, so if you're somehow watching this video and you're vegan or vegetarian, which if you watched any of my other videos, you probably have given up by now, you have to supplement or you're going to be deficient. So they also talk about intermittent fasting. And again, I do believe in intermittent fasting, but they talk about the ketogenic diet, the requiring strict food restrictions. Intermittent fasting lets you enjoy a variety of nutrient-dense foods such as fruits, veggies, whole grains, and legumes during your eating window. You don't need them. Again, that's you're epileptic? Well, just take this shot. Don't worry about the diet that could save you. Just keep taking this shot and paying us, right? That's the same thing. Don't worry about your diet. Eat all these carbohydrates, which, we've known for over 100 years that sugar feeds cancer and all carbohydrates convert to sugar in the body. But hey, don't. You can just intermittent fast. It's the same effect. It's the same thing. Don't worry about it, right? How does that make sense, right? It doesn't. It's not logical. So I do agree that fasting is beneficial, right? I think if we're constantly eating, then our body doesn't have time to sweep and clean house, right? I partake of what I call cyclic fasting. So I go anywhere from 16 to 20 hours that I fast, and I typically have a 6 to 8 hour eating window. It's definitely not the same every day because it just depends what I got going on and how things are going. So more approaches continued on. So they do talk about making small changes based on your health goals. So again, while I do believe everyone should be less than 50 grams of carbohydrates a day, if someone's just like, you know what, that's just too much. Oh my God, I can't. That's too far. Okay, We'll start you at 100 grams because 10 to 1, you're probably eating 7 or 800 grams a day, right? Depending on how carb heavy your nutrition is. And so, fine, let's work with it. Let's say 20% carbohydrates, 40% protein, 40% fat, and we can adjust from there. And that's for the people that are just like, they're so brainwashed, they're so programmed to believe I have to have carbs, right? I have to have them for performance. Really? I did an 8-mile swim with less than 5% carbohydrates. So then they go over their final takeaway. No one diet fits all, and what works for one person may not work for another. They talk about consulting your physician or your dietitian, which, did you consult with them as you were bulking up and putting on the pounds? I sure as hell didn't. Like, I didn't go to my doctor and be like, hey doc, is this licorice and Pringles bad for me, right? So, but again, if you're on meds, absolutely, because you're going to want to come off of those. There is one diet that is best for all people, and it is a meat-rich diet. With that being said, again, some people are so programmed, and honestly, I believe God gave us a large intestine so that we could digest some plant material. So I don't think everybody needs to be 100% animal product. But we should be 80 to 90% animal product. Honestly, if you look at the intestinal system of a carnivore versus an herbivore, we are carnivorous by design. So the whole bullshit that somehow we can be between vegan and carnivore and be healthy is one of the biggest lies of our time. We are designed to be carnivorous. We are not designed to be herbivores. And we are not omnivorous in the sense that we can be somewhere from vegan to carnivore. Because carnivores can thrive just eating animal products. Vegans suffer if they don't pound protein shakes and take supplements. So looking at our intestinal system, we are designed to be carnivorous. So yes, there is one diet that is best for all people, and it's animal products. So that's my story. So moral of the story, right? There is a preferred human diet, and it's called meat eater, right? So I've learned doing these videos that people see, well, you can be plant-based ketogenic, and no human should be plant-based. Our intestinal system is not designed for us to be vegetarian or vegan, okay? Our design is to consume meat, muscle of animals, right? We eat their muscle. That's what the meat is. That's what we are designed for. And so you can call it animal-based, you can call it low carbohydrate. I struggle calling it ketogenic anymore because people have the notion that you could be plant-based and ketogenic. No, it's not just about lowering the carbohydrates. It's about getting rid of the poisons. And so to me, that's just getting rid of the plant products. And now granted, right, maybe in the time of Jesus, plant products weren't that bad. I mean, but look at what we've done to them. Look at all the sprays and the crossbreeding. And there's a lot of vegetables that did not even exist 100 years ago, right? The core plant has been manipulated. That's how do you think we got cauliflower and broccoli and Brussels sprouts, right? They weren't around 2,000 years ago. I think a big issue too is just what we've done to it. So moral of this article, it was designed by, written by, whatever, sponsored by plant-based people. So again, they're not going to give and promote meat eating. And honestly, I'm never going to promote plant-based anything, right? Because it's not how we're designed. It's not how we're supposed to be eating. You want to feel good? Eat animal products. It's really that simple. And it's not restrictive. I don't feel restricted at all when I go in the grocery store and I'm the most fit person in there at 51 years old. And you got guys walking around looking like they're ready to birth twins. I mean, come on, people. We were not designed to live like that. We were not designed to spend our last 10, 15, 20 years sick before we die, right? You ever read the Old Testament? It talks about guys 70, 80 years old going in a battle with swords, dying at 120 to 150. What the hell are we doing? We're voluntarily poisoning ourselves with the food we eat. So, to be healthy, adopt a meat-heavy ketogenic diet. With that, I wish you a blessed day.